Okaeri! Welcome back to my channel, Made Between the Pages. My name is Taylor, and today we are finally going to do the third installment in my Japanese yokai and mythology series. Now, when I first started this series, my channel was significantly smaller. So if you haven't seen one of these videos from me before, what they are is an expression of my love for mythology. I adore mythology from all over the world. I love to read about it. I love to read retellings of it or watch movies about it. It's just something that I really enjoy, and I don't ever think I'll get tired of it. Now, in high school, like most American students, I heard or read mostly about Greek mythology. But when I got older, I started to realize there's this whole world of mythological creatures and stories from different cultures. So I started getting into Norse mythology and Asian mythology, and one of the cultures that's really captured me, surprise, surprise, is Japanese mythology. While Greek mythology is extremely interesting, I don't think that other cultures' mythologies are discussed enough. So I created this series on my channel to create a space where I could share the stories from the culture in which I now live, which is Japanese culture, and maybe in the comments down below be able to compare these stories to some mythological stories or creatures that are in your culture, or stories that fascinate you. My first installment in this series was the story of Kaguya Hime, the story of the princess from the moon. And the second one was a yokai version. So yokai is talking about Japanese monsters that typically show up in these mythological stories. And the second installment of this was a yokai video about Oni. So I will go ahead and link both of those down below if you're interested. And actually, Oni plays a pretty important part in this story that I'm going to tell today, which is the story of Momotaro, or Peach Boy. Momo means peach, and taro is like the old-timey, kind of old-school suffix for a boy's name. Where we begin the story is actually quite similar to Kaguya Hime, with an old couple who's just kind of minding their own business. While the old man is off chopping down some trees, the old lady is doing some laundry in the river. At one point, she looks upstream and she notices a gigantic peach floating down the river towards her. So naturally, they take the peach and they bring it back to their house. After bringing the peach back to the house, they decide to cut it open. And when they cut it open, a little baby boy just pops out. Thus, the name Momotaro. So this old couple raises him with love and support and instills in him good morals. And one day when he's older, there's an Oni making trouble in the neighboring villages. Now, if you've seen my Oni video from earlier, you'll know that Oni is a representation of pretty much all things bad in Japan. So if something goes wrong, it's an Oni. So having an Oni as the main bad guy in this story makes a lot of sense. So this Oni is going around destroying villages, taking treasure, and hoarding it on his island. Everyone is too scared to go after this Oni in order to take back what he's stolen, except Momotaro. Momotaro says, "You know what, guys? I got this. Don't worry." So he sets out on a journey to take on this Oni. Along the way, he meets a dog, a monkey, and a pheasant. To each of these animals, he basically bribes them with a kibidango. A kibidango, which I'll be sure to put a picture up here, is a small ball of soft mochi called gyuhi that is rolled into a cute little ball, and usually is rolled in some kind of flavor. So you have kinako, which is the soybean powder with sugar that you can roll it in. There are a lot of different flavors of kibidango nowadays. And so he gives this little treat to the dog, the monkey, and the pheasant to basically convince them to come with him to take on this Oni. After he sufficiently bribes all of these animals, they go together to the Oni's island and they confront him. Of course, they win the battle against the Oni and defeat him. And in the end, they take all of the treasures that the Oni has collected and bring them back to their rightful place. This was one of the first hero stories in Japan, so naturally it's pretty integrated into the culture. This story is usually geared towards children in the same way that fairy tales might be, in order to instill the ideal of morality into kids. As such, it's really common to see all kinds of Momotaro picture books or to see it mentioned in schools. When I used to work at a nursery school there, they had like a display of Momotaro at one point. So it's pretty much something that all Japanese kids are exposed to and learn about when they're young. There's even a Momotaro song that all kids learn in elementary school, and it sticks in their brain pretty much for their whole life. When I told my husband's family that I was going to be making this video, they pretty much, all of them, got all nostalgic about the song and looked it up, and they still knew it by heart. So it's clearly pretty well integrated into culture. We'll see if there are any copyright issues. I'm pretty sure this song is old enough now that it might not cause any issues, but if it doesn't, I'll go ahead and put an insert of the song here. But if it does have some issues, I'll be sure to link the YouTube videos that do have it down below.
Momotaro-san, お腰につけたきびだんご一つ私にくださいな。やりましょうやりましょう、これから鬼の征伐についていくならやりましょう。
Even though this is mostly for kids, we do see Momotaro popping up in video games or more modern media. There's an older game called Momotaro Densetsu, which is a video game that involves a lot of different Japanese mythological characters, and a lot of these I'm actually going to get into later in this series, but this is a pretty famous video game that has to do with Momotaro. There's also a more recent game called Monster Strike that started out as a phone game and then became a Nintendo DS game later, and that also includes Momotaro as a character that you can play. One of the most popular renditions of Momotaro in recent years was when the phone company AU created a series of commercials that focused on mythological characters, including Momotaro. In these commercials, Momotaro is joined by Kintaro and Urashimataro. Those two are also like hero stories from old school Japan, and these three become friends in the commercials. And they're actually quite funny. These commercials were so popular that they actually went on for a really long time, and there's a lot of them. So you can find a lot of them on YouTube, but I'll see if I can insert one here. If I can't, I will be sure to link it down below, just like the song.
この辺、
ここももちゃんどんぶらこしてきたの？
ちょっと金ちゃん、そのどんぶらこってやめてよ。
でもどんぶらこでしょ。
ちょっと浦ちゃんまで。
そういえばさ、今日子分たちは？
ああ、犬と猿とキジ？
うん、そうそう。
いや、俺今日きびだんご持ってきてなくてさ。
きびだんごで集合かかんの？
きびだんごコミュニケーション？
ずっと気になってたんだけどさ、犬と猿はわかるよ。強いし賢いし。言いたいことわかる。なんでキジ？鳥でもいろいろいるじゃん。ワシとかタカとか。
キジやっぱ微妙だよね。
あ、うちのクマ貸そうか。
そういうのあり？
ありだよ。ゴム変えちゃおう変えちゃおう。ちなみにうちそこ。行こう。
そういうの早く教えて。
楽しみ。
新しい英雄始まる。
なんか自由だな。
I linked that specific commercial because of the subtitles in English below, and also because there's a really interesting point made within the jokes in this particular one. Kintaro and Urashimataro ask Momotaro why his three friends, the dog, the pheasant, and the monkey, aren't here, like on screen with them. And Momotaro says, I didn't bring their kibidango today, so I didn't bring their snack, so they have no reason to come and hang out with us. The other two then ask him, well, why did you choose a pheasant in the first place? Isn't that kind of useless, like a useless bird in a battle with an oni? And in the commercial, Momotaro does say, yeah, on second thought, probably not the best choice. But after doing some research, I have discovered that the pheasant is actually the traditional bird, the official bird of Japan. So it makes a lot of sense that the pheasant was chosen as a character in this quintessential story, even though it does seem like kind of weak sauce against an oni. Because this is such a prolific story, you can find reiterations of it all over the internet. I even found a book that was written in like 2017 called Momotaro, about a young boy who goes on an adventure in like a monster world and stuff. So you can see it being used and represented in many different ways. So if you're interested in learning more about the story and its cultural implications, I would suggest that you just kind of give it a little Google and a lot will pop up. However, to get you guys started, I'll be sure to link some videos down below. I mentioned earlier in this series that there is an old school Japanese TV show called Nippon no Mukashi Banashi. It's very old school and it tells lots of different stories from, old school Japan. It is in Japanese, so if you don't speak Japanese, it might be a little difficult, but it would still be a good starting place if you want to see the original or old school telling of this story. That concludes this installment of the Japanese Mythology and Yokai series. I hope you enjoyed it. I really love making these videos. I'd kind of, distanced myself or hadn't made one for a long time because the first two that I made didn't seem to be so popular, and they take a lot of work and a lot of research to make sure that I'm telling you guys, everything correctly. So I hadn't made them for quite some time. However, I had some friends and some subscribers tell me during my Q&A, my 500 subscriber Q&A, that they would be really interested in seeing more of this series. So I decided to start it back up again. Please leave a comment down below if you enjoy this, if you'd like to see more, if you have any comments or any experiences with the story of Momotaro yourself. I would love to chat with you guys down below. But for now, I'm gonna head out. じゃあね!